there's a typo under letter number, or number 1. This is October 23rd, 2024, and that's just a mistake. It should be December 11th, 2024. So if you want to change your notes, go ahead and do it.
And Jesse, one more clarification. In the packet is the bill list, but you have a supplemental bill list that was passed out to you. The highlighted items are those that were added from Monday to Wednesday to today. So we're asking you approve those in addition to those that you received in your packet.
Thank you. And so with all of that, I will make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented with the additions for December 11th, 2024. Is there a second?
Yep, this is Sue. I'll second.
Any other questions or discussions? If not, I'll call for the vote.
Ron, aye.
Sue, aye.
Janet, aye.
Rob, aye.
And Jesse, aye. Letter number C, public open forum. Is there anyone in the chambers or online who would like to speak at public open forum? Sure, come up to the mic.
I know some of you are familiar with me. I just had a quick question because do you need my address?
Yep.
Full name and address. Jennifer Latin, 7944 174th Court, Columbus, Minnesota, 55025. I saw on our community page last week that, and I didn't see it on the agenda, so I wanted to address it, that an incident had happened, and I was just curious because I guess more curious if anything had come of that or if there was going to be any discussion around what that looked like in terms of having council members together and in any kind of setting where it isn't publicized or published. But was there any plan to discuss that tonight?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, so was it last week after the meeting? I believe there was an incident where 3 of you were together. Does that sound correct?
Do you want to talk about this, Bill?
Sure.
Thanks.
Yeah, I think there was a complaint filed with the city administrator, and
I wouldn't call it a complaint. I'd call it a meltdown. There you go.
Mr. Mayor and Council, the city administrator contacted me after the last meeting, mentioned that 3 council members were in the chambers after the meeting. There were a number of discussions going on. My understanding is no official business was being conducted at that time. That's how I understood it. But I actually did provide to the city administrator an outline of the open meeting law. In addition, we have some information from the Department of Administration. So I'm just going to go through that right now so we're all clear. The other thing we often do, and I mentioned this to the administrator, is whenever there's a changeover in council, we often do a kind of a legal discussion about what their authority is, what open meeting law is, when meetings can be closed, when there's conflicts of interest. So I think that's probably a good workshop item with 2 new council members coming in. But addressing open meeting law, the key to open meeting law is whenever a quorum of the council is present, so 3 or more members, no official business can be conducted outside of a public meeting. So the key in any discussion is whether there is official business of the city going on. And so this body's aware of that. We've had the discussion going back to, I think, the beginning of everybody's terms. But it's always a good refresher, and it applies not only to the council, but any committee of the council and any city commission. So the Planning Commission, for instance, has the same requirements under law to conduct official business within an open meeting and a published meeting.
Okay, so when it comes to, I mean, obviously at city council meetings, people are going to be talking after meetings and things like that, and I expect that, right? Yep. So it seemed like that's maybe what happened last week, it sounds like. And so I just wanted to be clear, were there going to be maybe parameters set, like 10 minutes or 15 minutes, and we'd try to move out? Or, I mean, obviously coming into this, I want to understand. And so I just think it's maybe appropriate that we all understand as well. Does that sound fair?
It certainly sounds fair. I think it's up to the council whether they want to establish requirements beyond the legal requirements and policies on conducting city business. Some cities do that. We actually, I believe, looked at that question some time ago and adopted practices. We, the council, adopted practices, that is. So I think it's always a fair question. We want the public, as a body, the city council wants the public to have a high level of confidence in the actions that are taken, that actions are taken in a public meeting. The discussions that occurred a couple weeks ago were not official city business. I think somebody was ordering food. So I don't know that that constitutes official city business, but it's always good to be aware and to be concerned that those rules are followed.
And then if people are here, the doors will remain open, is that correct?
Yeah, I think my understanding from talking to the city administrator is that the doors just locked themselves. It wasn't a matter if somebody locked the public out. It's just, I don't know if it's after certain hours they lock or.
Actually, what happened is when the meeting was over, Mrs. Hegland and Jim worked on a problem here on the audio, and Jim left and he said he was going to lock the door, and he did. I said, that's fine, because I was going to lock it when I left. So that's why the door was locked.
And that's perfectly fine and understandable. So I just, again, more was trying to get to a place where we all have understanding what that looks like. So, because I mean, obviously you have a lot of people that are on remote now and the recording ends after the meeting. Mm-hmm. And so they wouldn't be privy to any information. And so I just want to make sure that everybody's understanding of that. Does that make sense?
Yes, just to recap, regardless of whether the council changes any of its practices, the law is clear that if 3 or more members are present, you cannot conduct official business outside of a public meeting. So that's the bright line rule.
Perfect. Thank you all so much.
So since we're on this topic, this is Rob. So would a quorum, I want to get this out there, if there was a council, say two council people and anyone from a planning commission, would that constitute a quorum? Is it only 3 city council or 3 with a combination of mayor and city council?
It has to be a quorum, therefore a majority of that body. So for the planning commission, I believe that's a 5-member body. So three members of the planning commission. If a planning commission member and 2 council members are talking, that's not a violation.
So if said a council member wanted to have a meeting with 2 planning commission members, that's allowable?
Correct.
Okay, I just want to check in case that would to come up in the future. Is it okay for a council member outside of a regular meeting to maybe have a meeting with the whole planning commission on their feelings on maybe a topic?
No.
Okay.
No, that would only happen in a public meeting. And the other thing that the guidance that comes from the League of Minnesota Cities, Department of Administration, is it also against serial meetings. So I'm just going to take this opportunity. I think you're all aware of that. You don't start an email chain on what do you think. I've never seen that done by this body in recent years. So I don't think we have a problem there, but it's worth repeating that if somebody wants to solicit your opinion about how you might decide a question, the answer is always, you'll find out, when that item comes up. So, and I think this council's been very careful. That's a whole another rule, which is to the impartiality of your decision. We've talked about that before. If you're canvassing the vote, so to speak, you're no longer impartial in your decision making. So that's another thing. It relates to open meeting law, but it's another legal principle. So that's why, while you can legally go talk to planning commissioners, you really shouldn't be talking to planning commissioners about official business except for in a public meeting. That's really what the rule is intended, so the public can then be here to observe that discussion and that decision making. It's a different question if 2 council members go and talk to the city administrator about something that might be on the agenda. You're perfectly free to do that. And likewise, I've said to council members, you're free to call me if you have any question about what's in bounds or out of bounds. And you won't ring up a charge because that's part of our retainer service. So those are all things to think about. But really, it's a really simple bright line rule. If official business is being conducted, it should be conducted here in an open and public meeting.
One more. If a resident had a question, are they able to contact you, or does that first go through the administrator and then to you?
That should be at the administrator's discretion.
Okay.
Yep. Because technically I work for the city government.
Yep.
I think there's a view sometimes that I work for the whole community, and technically we do serve the whole community through the city government.
Okay.
And so if somebody had a legal question, it should first go to the administrator. The administrator can decide to contact me, or the administrator can decide to bring it to the city council and say, what would you like to do with this question? So those are all kind of judgment calls that Jack gets to make.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just say one thing, too? So this has come up before, and I appreciate the clarification. I think it's really confusing for a lot of people. They think that if there's 3 people in one place, 3 council members or 3 planning commissioner members or whatever in one place at one time, that you're violating open meeting law, and that's not the case. I think the other thing to keep in mind is that there's a number of us that serve on a lot of committees, and it is very possible that I could be up here meeting with Jack, and Jesse could be in there meeting with Cheryl, and Ron could be here talking to somebody else, and we're not even in the same place at the same time. But if you drive by and see 3 cars, it's going to look like we're all here, right? And to Bill's point, I think anytime there's a question like that, call and talk to Jack. I mean, he knows why we're here and who we're talking to and what's going on. So, I mean, it's pretty clear that that's to assume the worst is probably not very productive. Just ask the question. What was going on last night? It looked like there was another meeting going on.
And I want to follow with I personally, as city attorney, feel like it was handled well. Jack consulted me not long after the question arose. He gave me the facts. I gave him my judgment. I came prepared tonight to address this in case questions came from the public.
With that, I see someone's hand is up on the screen. It's Tim, but I can't read your last name because the letters are so small. So Tim, go ahead.
Good afternoon or good evening. Tim Wessels, 8064 174th Court, Northeast in Columbus. I'm here. First, I'd like to discuss Councilmember-elect Latton's comment that she brought up. I appreciate the transparency that I know she's going to bring and her insight from what she does for her profession and has done for our community. So I appreciate that she will be joining you guys shortly. I just found it interesting listening to the last 10, 15 minutes. Councilmember-elect Latton brought up the complaint of the meeting, a quorum being present, and then I'm not sure exactly what the complaint is, but I heard one of the council members say they weren't aware of any complaint, and then that same voice said something to the effect of it wasn't a complaint, it was a meltdown. So I guess I was a little bit confused about the comments there. Whether or not they knew of this incident or didn't after having said they didn't, and then the attorney making it aware that the body was aware of the complaint that was raised. So number one, that's just what I wanted to cover. Number two, I would also like to speak to...
Sorry, this is Sue Wagamon. Can I address your first question?
Yes, ma'am.
Because I was the one that said I wasn't aware. I left the meeting before everybody else did. I was the one that said I was not aware. I think Janet made the other comment, but we have voices that are very similar. So I just wanted to address that one.
No, and I appreciate that. The camera isn't panning to you guys individually, so I honestly couldn't see who it was. I just wanted to clarify that and appreciate Council Member-elect Latton's question that she raised. The second thing that I would like to address is the tax levy proposed for 2025. I've been a resident here with my family since 2018. We built a home here in Columbus, and we love the city of Columbus. Since moving in, I want to address the 2025 proposed itself. So I did a comparison of a lot of the cities in Anoka County, specifically cities that are similarly sized to that of Columbus. And I have seen on my proposed property tax statement that the city levy is $4,200,000 and some change. And with a population of 4,266 residents in 2023, that essentially puts the cost of the levy per resident at $992 and some change. My concern is raised because I look at the city of Ham Lake, Oak Grove, Linwood, now then Centerville, Circle Pines, East Bethel, some cities that are comparatively sized to that of Columbus. And while the city of Columbus is at $992 per resident, I'm seeing other cities such as Linwood at $394 per resident, Oak Grove, which is a much larger city than us, at $485 per resident. Ham Lake at $399 per resident. So I'm seeing double, if not almost triple, the property tax compared to some of our neighboring cities in Anoka County itself. That is concerning to me. My property taxes since moving in 2018 have increased almost 19%. And I find it disheartening that some of the persons that were on the ticket for council in the latest election were running and touting that they were going to get property taxes decreased or that the levy has decreased. I have not seen that one iota. The increase 2024 for my family specifically to the 2025 proposal is almost 6%. The county increase, which I'm obviously not going to address the county increase, is 22.1%. And again, 18.25% total since I have moved into the city of Columbus. Now over $600 a month in essentially property taxes that my family is now on the hook for. This is very concerning to me. It's concerning for a couple of reasons, because when you compare the services that we get in the city of Columbus to the other cities in the county, there are many other cities that have 24-hour police, for example. We do not have 24-hour in the city of Columbus police. I understand how the zone car works and that they respond to us, but I'm talking about cities that have 24-hour coverage in their city. Secondly, there are many cities, including Oak Grove, that have their own fire department and their own police department. Their levy is the same, and they have more than double the residents of the city of Columbus. Okay, that is concerning to me. The last thing I'd like to address is I spoke to Councilmember Hegland a couple of years ago about this. Running aces in the truck stop is a concern of mine. And I spoke to Councilmember Hegland about maybe seeing if we can get the numbers of calls per service to the truck stop and running aces. I was made aware in 2022 that Running Aces was paying a voluntary fee of essentially $88,000 towards police service for the city of Columbus. Knowing that our contract proposed for 2025 is $495,000, I would like them to pay a proportional amount for the services that the casino requires. I have visited the casino. In full transparency, I do know quite a bit about law enforcement services and what that casino specifically needs. And I feel like they're not paying their fair share, and the calls for service and need for police there more than we probably get is substantial. So those are my concerns that I wanted to air in front of all of you tonight. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak at the public open forum?
Good evening. Chase Roth, 8820 189th Avenue Northeast. In addition to the first issue that was brought up, thank you for the clarification that you all provided. One question I have is, moving forward with this next changeover in council, I understand, Ron, you have 2 years left of your term. What is the plan to fill that seat? And what does that process look like?
You want to talk about that? I think you've talked about it a number of times, Jack, but go ahead.
The process is, since Mr. Hanegraaff is a council member, he will have to resign his position before he's sworn in. His position expires, or let his position expire. His position expires on December the 31st. At that time, he'll submit a letter of resignation to the city council. The city council will then accept that and declare a vacant seat, and then it's up to the council to determine the process by which that vacancy is filled.
Okay. Have any names been thrown out who would fill your seat?
The process for that filling hasn't been determined. It'll be discussed after the vacancy for the seat is declared at the January the 8th meeting.
Okay, so there's no standard protocol already?
Nope. Actually, they could just pick somebody out of the audience if they wanted to and appoint them. There's no real guidelines, except you have to be a resident of Columbus, I believe, for 30 days and be 21 years old.
So who makes that pick?
That'll be determined by the council. They'll discuss what process they want to use, and then they'll propose a nominee, and then they'll vote on it.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Do we want to respond to Mr. Wessel's comment on the levy? I'd be happy to, I'd like to just make a clarification on a couple of things that he said, if that's all right.
Fine with me.
Couple things. I think, actually, I appreciate how much time you've taken looking into this. It's really complicated. There is a tool on the League of Minnesota Cities website that allows you to do comparisons across cities, but one of the things it doesn't do is it doesn't talk about cities like some of them that you've mentioned that are over 5,000 in population and the amount of state money that they get that we don't get. So part of the problem with Columbus is that we don't get state aid, and we spend a lot of money, a lot of our tax dollars go out to other communities in forms of a tax called fiscal disparities. So it's really hard to compare us to other cities. Oak Grove, like you said, is much bigger. They get thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars of state aid. We get zero. And on top of it, they also get money in through the fiscal disparities program, and we end up paying $200,000-$300,000 basically net a year towards that program. So the fact that we have that sort of strike against us makes it really hard to say, you know, we should be on the same playing field as some of those other communities. I think if you look on the back of your property tax statement, the one you just got, and you look at the one last year, it will show you every community in Anoka County, and it will show you their levy, and it will show you what % increase or decrease there has been. So if you just look at the city portion, which is the only part that we're responsible for, you'll see that we're a negative 0.02% for 2025, and we were about that for last year too. So that's when you've heard me talk about the fact that we've held the levy steady or have decreased it, that's what I'm talking about. So I just wanted to clarify that. I totally sympathize with the amount of money that people spend on taxes. I don't like it either, but it's that's part of the reason why ours might seem high as compared to other cities. And there's nothing we can do about that other than we've gone to the state to lobby for relief in terms of the fiscal disparities, and the state law just hasn't been kind to cities like ours that have a small population. And I know, Bill, you've talked about this a lot too, so if you have anything more to add to that, you certainly can.
Mr. Mayor and Council, one thing the public should understand is the city has done a good job at attracting commercial industrial development, particularly helping to coalition of government agencies to build the new bridge and all the roads around it. That's led to commercial industrial tax base. The dynamic is our population is relatively stagnant. Our commercial industrial tax base goes up. When it does, more and more of that tax base goes into the fiscal disparities pool. So as Councilmember Hegland has said, we've been working with our legislative delegation to try and find a remedy for that. In the meantime, it does work against this community. That tax base has, on the flip side, that very same tax base has allowed this council and others to decrease the levy. And this council, as I understand, has been pretty proactive in that regard. They can discuss that more in their budget discussion. So that's just a little bit of background. It's a law that went into effect in the 1970s. Most of Anoka County benefits from it. This community, because the population is relatively flat, and the city has been growing its commercial industrial tax base, it does work against us. We also don't get the gas tax money because our community is under 5,000. That's actually in the state constitution, so very difficult to change. And then finally, local government aids that many of the communities in Anoka County get do not come to this community.
One other distinction that we have that 3 of those other cities or townships that you mentioned don't have is they do not have any type of public utilities. We do. That's another expense that we have to operate those. And until we get billed out, we won't be in a position to really recapture all the money it takes to amortize some of that bond debt. So that's another distinction between Columbus, Oak Grove, Linwood, and Ham Lake.
Thank you, Jack. Anything else from anyone? If not, we'll move on to the 2025 final levy and budget presentation and a request for approval. Is there anyone in the public who would like to comment on that?
Now, Jesse, the first thing we need to do is make a motion to open that up for public comment
Sorry?
and allow anyone then to speak on the budget and the levy.
I'll make a motion to open it for public comment. Is there a second?
This is Sue, I'll second.
I'll call for the vote.
Ron, aye.
Sue, aye.
Janet, aye.
Rob, aye.
And Jesse, aye. So now, is there anyone else who would like to comment on the 2025 budget? I see no one in the room and I see no one online. So, Jack, would you like to begin?
Thank you, Jesse. We've covered the public comment section.
Oh, sorry, do I have to close the public comment part?
Yes, I'm sorry.
So I'd like a motion to close the public comment part.
This is Sue, I'll second.
Ron, aye.
Sue, aye.
Janet, aye.
Rob, aye.
And Jesse, aye.
We've covered the public comment portion, and that is a requirement of state statute 275.065. And the comment period allows stakeholders to provide input to City Council on proposed budgets and tax levies. The state requires that each city announce the date, time, and place of the meeting where residents can provide City Council feedback on proposed budgets and those levies. The Columbus City Council approved the 2025 preliminary levy and budget on September 25th, 2024, and set the date for this public comment period for tonight's meeting, December the 11th, 2024. The certified levy amount of $4,231,505 was submitted to Anoka County on September 26, 2024, for preparation of the 2025 preliminary property tax statements, which were sent to Columbus residents in November 2024. The meeting date of tonight's meeting is also listed on the parcel-specific notices for the proposed 2025 taxes that taxpayers received in November from Anoka County. The 2025 preliminary budget proposes a levy upon taxable property of $4,231,505, or a decrease of 0.02% over the 2024 levy of $4,232,386. The proposed 2025 HRA EDA levy, which is a special and separate levy from the general fund levy, is $120,000, and it's an amount unchanged from 2024. The proposed budget for 2025 is $4,971,505. This is the general fund, along with the 2025 non-levied revenues and the separate HRA EDA levy. Enterprise funds, which are the water and sewer accounts, are paid entirely from user fees, and their budgets are separate from the levies supported the general fund and are not included in the general budget totals. Total expenditures, including the general funds for the city, are budgeted for $5,222,895 for 2025. Staff recommends that council have the public comment period, which we've had, and then consider approval of resolutions 2419, which is the approval of the 2025 budget, resolution 2420, which is the general fund levy, and resolution 2421 approving the EDA HRA levy. The approved 2025 levy will be sent to Anoka County, and final property tax statements will be mailed to residents in March 2025. This is the second consecutive year that Columbus has produced a level or a reduction of the city tax levy. So at this point, there's 3 motions in your packet that would approve those resolutions to set the final budget, set the preliminary tax levy, and approve the final 2025 HRA EDA levy.
So we've been through this since August or September over and over again, and I think we all understand pretty clearly what the expenditures and the incomes are for the city. So I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 24-19, a resolution to approve the final 2025 budget. Is there a second?
This is Janet, I second.
So we have a motion and a second. Are there any other questions or discussions on the final budget?
This is Rob. I just kind of in part to what Tim was talking about, I just wanted to share that there was many things that we cut, and Jack and Cheryl worked diligently to cut out of this to try and even bring it down farther. So just wanted to share with that there was additional cuts and stuff taken from other departments to even try and minimize the tax impact. But if it did go up, do apologize. I'm not a fan of huge taxes either. I don't think anyone is, but thanks for all your comments tonight. That's it.
Anything else from anyone? So I've made the motion and we have a second. I'll call for the vote.
Ron, aye.
Sue, aye.
Janet, I.
Rob, aye.
And Jesse, aye. Motion number 3. I move to approve Resolution 2420, a resolution approving the 2025 preliminary tax levy for property taxes collectible in 2025. Is there a second?
Ron, I'll second it.
Any questions or discussion? I'll call for the vote.
Ron, aye.
Sue, aye.
Janet, I.
Rob, aye.
And Jesse, aye. Motion number 4, I move to approve Resolution 24-21, a resolution approving the final 2025 Housing and Redevelopment Authority property tax levy and budget. Is there a second?
This is Sue, I'll second.
Any other questions or discussions? I'll call for the vote.
Ron, aye.
Sue, aye.
Janet, I.
Rob, aye.
And Jesse, aye. Item number 3 is the fee schedule. Jack, would you like to lead us a little bit on that?
Thank you, Jesse. Each year, the city reviews the current fee schedule and discusses any recommended changes to be approved for the following year's fees. The following in your packet is a summary that supports suggested fee schedules for 2025. The schedule's listed in there with red line comments as to those changes. There was a later addendum that came out that included some comments from the city engineer resulting to water and sewer fees, and we can discuss those when we get to it. Fee schedules are usually something that usually require a great deal of review, and people have a lot of comments on them. We're rolling these out here early so you can review them, and any comments we can discuss them and make adjustments. There's no really set deadline. We'd like to get them approved by the end of December or the first meeting in January at the latest.
So, board, should we approve this tonight or should we wait until our last meeting in 2 weeks?
So this is Janet. I had a number of questions that I spoke with Jack about related to this. So one of them had to do with the Community Senior Center, which I'm all for opening it up to the public and having a fee schedule. But I think we started that process maybe a year and a half or 2 years ago. And one of the things that we felt we needed before we put a fee schedule in place was a policy related to, who can use it. Do you charge nonprofits the same as you might charge a for-profit? Is it only going to be for residents or non-residents, et cetera? And we never resolved all of that. So I think before we look at approving the fee schedule, at least for that one particular item, I think we need to get that figured out so that the staff has direction when they get calls to make reservations. And I know Jack, I suggested he dig through and see what the last version of those that policy was.
So, Jack, would that make a problem for you if we don't approve this tonight?
No, and to be, we did not expect it to be approved because generally there's a lot of questions on these, and it always brings up something that we really need to check and modify from year to year. That's why it's done annually. And this is the first attempt at going through this. making any changes or corrections that you see that we need to do.
I think the other question that I have on this is that there's a section on here for maintenance permit fees, but I know that the question has come up in the past about what is maintenance and what is repair, and I think that it would be really helpful for the fee schedule to have that defined as well. So if somebody's fixing something on their siding, does that require a permit? You know, what constitutes maintenance versus repair? And I think that we don't have a definition of that, and I think that that has maybe created some problems in the past. So I would also suggest that we get that kind of defined before we move forward with approving that part of the fee schedule as well.
Then I'll make the motion that we hold this over until our next meeting. Does that give us enough time, 2 weeks, or should we postpone
No,
it until January?
let's bring it up to the next meeting, and then
Or do you think it's a workshop item?
it wouldn't hurt to have it as a workshop item. We haven't, we probably won't have the workshop at the first meeting in January. The thing about the fee schedule is we can amend it at any time, so we might want to pass one, so we'll have one at least in place at the first of the year, and then make it, if it's still something we want to review, we can do it at the first meeting in February to go over this more thoroughly and devote the whole meeting to it.
Yeah, I like the way that sounds.
Mr. Mayor and Council, I like that suggestion because in the past, the city has always endeavored to have its new schedule January 1st. So, you know, the non-controversial parts can go into effect and you can continue to tweak it as the time goes on.
So I'll make the motion to hold this over until our next meeting. Is there a second?
This is Sue, I'll second.
I'll call for the vote.
Ron, aye.
Sue, aye.
Janet, aye.
Rob, aye.
And Jesse, aye. Item number 4, the ARPA broadband grant. Jack?
The City of Columbus will be the recipient of an American Recovery Plan Act that goes by the acronym ARPA for broadband service extension to 5 underserved and unserved areas of the city. Attachment 3 in your packet is a project map that shows these locations. An additional area on Line Street will could become part of the project. 3 new Columbus connections in this neighborhood would be included in the project, with the exception of isolated end-of-line extensions to be addressed by Midco through other programs. The availability of broadband service will be available to all Columbus residents at the completion of this work. This grant is administered through Anoka County, and the history of this program is outlined in Attachment 1 of your packet, which is County Resolution number 2014-119. Midco made applications to the county on behalf of the City of Columbus in June 2024 for the ARPA funds. Though the original grant requests were denied, the program was reopened due to the efforts of Columbus City Council member Janet Hegland and County Commissioner Jeff Reinert. The northern Anoka County municipalities of Columbus, Linwood, Bethel, and East Bethel were ultimately the recipients of $1.6 million of these funds. The City of Columbus's share will be $536,800, with Midco contributing $471,000 to the project. Attachment 1 in your packet is the county resolution that authorizes the reopening of the community broadband program and the award of $1,600,000 to be used for support of the expansion of broadband access. The city attorney has reviewed the agreement for the funding and has no amendment recommendations. However, he did recommend certain procedural items that need to be corrected or need to be done to correspond with the grant. And that's the designation of a liaison responsible for the administration of the project in Columbus, and recognition that the final disbursement of the request must be done by October 31st, 2026, and also that the grant program requires compliance with several federal laws and executive orders, and the city attorney's office will work with the city to make sure we're in compliance with all those. In the original submission of this request, Exhibit A and Exhibit B were not included. Only the appendices A, B, C, and D were there, but in this one, Appendix A and B are included in your packet. So at this time, the staff recommends that the City Council consider approval of the ARPA broadband grant subrecipient agreement and sign this, submit it to the county. Things are worked out with Midco. It's on their construction schedule, and hopefully they can get started this year and get this service to another 118 residents in the city.
I just want to say one thing, and I know Ron had mentioned this before, that just thank you to Janet, Councilmember Hegland, for all your hard work on this. We started, I mean, when I started on the council 4 years ago, it was COVID, and that's when the ARPA money started, and we got the first round, and we got that all done. And you worked so many hours with Midco and CenturyLink, and then when this came around and we got denied, and then your tenacity is what pushed this through. So now we have the rest of our residents that have access, and you know, I don't know that everybody understands how much work that is, and I just thank you for all of that. Now we can close it out at the end of 4 years.
It's been, thank you for saying that. It's been actually really rewarding that we've been able to do this in the 6 years. I remember first having this discussion. I remember, Bill, I think you had an estimate it would cost us $6 million to do this if we paid for it ourselves. So it's really rewarding to know that we were able to leverage dollars from, you know, grants in the county and deed and other areas to be able to get this done at no cost to the residents. So,
So, yep, thank
Super
you.
excited.
That's all.
I'd like to say something also. I know we give our Representative Reinhardt credit for it, but you approached him. And if you wouldn't have rattled the cage, I don't think we'd have got the money.
well, I think there was a miscommunication at the county level. I don't think he recognized or knew that we had actually applied. They had been told that that there were no applicants. So I will just say this. I saw that in the Forest Lake Times, and had I not read that in the Forest Lake Times and said, wait a minute, we applied? What do they mean that nobody applied? I would not have known to call him and say, what's going on here? I mean, this is crazy. So if anybody hasn't subscribed to the Forest Lake Times, that one article just saved the city $600,000. So.
Oh, very good.
Yep.
Thank you.
And so with that, I'll make the motion to approve the American Rescue Plan Act Broadband Infrastructure Program. Subsequent, what's the word?
Sub-recipient.
Sub-recipient agreement between the County of Anoka, Minnesota, and the City of Columbus, as recited in Attachment 2 of the December 11, 2024 City Council packet, along with Exhibits A and B and Appendices A, B, C, and D, which are included in the council packet and are a part of the agreement as presented. Is there a second?
Yep, this is Sue, I'll second.
Oh, any other questions? I'll call for the vote.
Ron, aye?
Sue, aye.
Janet, aye.
Rob, aye.
And Jesse, aye. And item number 5, the Midco cost sharing agreement. I move to approve the Midco cost sharing agreement as presented as item C5 on the December 11th, 2024 City Council packet and as amended by the addendum submitted to the City Council on December 9th, 2024. Is there a second for that motion?
Rob, I'll second.
Mr. Mayor, can I just make a comment on that?
Certainly.
The city administrator mentioned federal compliance, and the reason you got a fairly beefed up version of this second agreement is we are taking those federal requirements and imposing them on Midco as part of the build out. They agreed to that last time. They've agreed to this form, so I don't think it'll be controversial. But the way we secure compliance is by pushing those federal requirements down to Midco, and they know what to do with regard to those requirements because they've complied before.
Thank you.
And I'll just also clarify, it's a cost sharing agreement because there's an input of $475,000, I can't remember exactly, over $400,000 that Midco's putting into this, so that's why it's cost sharing.
All right.
Rob, question for Bill. Does, with these funds, because they come from the federal government, correct? They are to carry prevailing wages, correct?
Yes.
For any labor that is done?
That's one of the clauses.
Perfect. I just
Yep.
wanted to make sure that was
That is
clear,
correct.
because I remember hearing that on the news and doing a little research on it. Thank you.
Anything else, anyone? I'll call for the vote.
Ron, aye.
Sue, I.
Janet, I.
Rob, aye.
And Jesse, aye. Letter D, City Engineer Kevin Hornsby Drainage Project.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. Kevin Bittner, City Engineer. First item to talk about is in regards to drainage for Hornsby Street. If you refer to the diagram that I provided in the packet, this is to address that drainage ditch that comes along the south side of Bear Home and crosses under Hornsby, flowing to the east. There isn't a real good drainage path currently, as the ground in that farm field is probably a couple of feet higher than the culvert. And so what we've done is we've approached that property owner in regards to obtaining a drainage easement in order to cut the ditch all the way to County Ditch 15. So that's depicted in the yellow. And the property owner, which is part of a trust, responded and said that they aren't opposed to an easement, but what they would like to see is to have either a ditch or culvert or excuse me, a pipe go all the way over to Judicial Ditch 4, which is basically off of their property to the east. And so that certainly changes the scope of the project. And then since it involves essentially 2 county ditches in the process, the question would be whether we would want to petition the Rice Creek Watershed District to undertake a project for this. It would require a petition. They would evaluate that petition and determine whether to move forward. And at that point, if they would, a report would be prepared and a public hearing conducted. That's just kind of the initial stages. So the other option that we would have, which isn't a preferable option, would be to just obtain our drainage easement in the yellow through process of condemnation. But obviously the full project, as preferred by the property owner, involves a lot more. And so the city could petition for that project, but ultimately the cost would probably be more than likely borne close to or 100% by the city. So at this point, it's just more for information, and I don't know if you'd be prepared to authorize anything at this time, but that's the communication that we've had with that particular property owner, and so we need some kind of authorization, I guess, to know how to proceed or not with this. So if you have any questions, certainly would be happy to answer them if I can.
Thank you. Any questions, anyone?
Can you, what prompted this? I mean, it looks like we made the inquiry. What was?
Yeah, so when we did the Hornsby Street improvement, we never fully addressed the drainage away from the street. And so we needed to try to kind of bring that to some level of resolution. So Bill had drafted up some easement documents a while back, and so then we finally got around to approaching the property owner about potentially obtaining that easement. So it's something that's always been in the bucket list since we did that improvement.
And is it imminent that we need to do that, or I'm not wild about the idea of petitioning Rice Creek. That's why I'm asking the question.
Sure. No, I mean, what we're trying to do is ensure the long-term integrity of the road making sure we have appropriate drainage away. I mean, right now, it's no different than it has been historically, but at the same time, if we can make sure that long-term we're providing proper drainage away from the road so that we're not having any issues with saturation or whatever, that would be the preferred option.
But this hasn't been a problem in the past?
Maybe Jim can speak more long-term to that, but
So basically what we did when we reconstructed Hornsby is, we redug all the ditches along Hornsby Street. So, we've reestablished the drainage that was once there years ago. And in doing that, we replaced, there's actually 2 culverts that we have an issue with. But this one here we're addressing currently. Right now, the elevation of the outlet side of the culvert is 2 feet lower than the drainage of where it's supposed to be draining to. So what happens at this point now is any water that drains down, as it should now, hits that culvert and it just sits there and then backs up into the ditch. Ultimately, it'll evaporate or, soak into the banks or the ground, but could ultimately end up saturating the subbase of the road and create undue wear. So that's kind of what Kevin and I have been talking about. It wasn't as drastic as it is now because now everything is reestablished except for this portion. Does that make sense? So at one point it did drain. Mm-hmm. Everything just kind of filled in over time, farmers, plow fields and you get runoff and, same thing in ditches and, trees fall and, leaves fall and, everything fills in over time, right? But now with the ditch lines reestablished, the road redone, we reestablished all of the grades as they were years ago, except for that portion.
So off the back of the napkin deal, they're 10,000, 100,000, or a million?
in terms of the cost of the improvement, it's certainly not $1 million. I'd hate to venture a guess at this point. It would require, I guess, how we would get that across, whether we would do it in a pipe or in a open ditch is something that would have to be addressed. The other issue that's involved is the potential of, other environmental impacts, wetlands, and so forth, which we don't know about at this point. If I were to just kind of take a stab at it, it's probably a $250,000 project, but that's strictly kind of a wild guess at this point. So,
Kevin, is that a natural flow right where the yellow line is there? Is that a culvert there then? At that point?
The yellow line is just what we would propose to excavate a ditch. Right now, I'm assuming the way it flows now is that, as Jim indicated, when we do get some flow in the ditch on the west side of the road, it comes under the culvert, it kind of holds up, it has to build up to a point where it finally gets over that little berm or the higher ground, and it probably flows across that farm field wherever it finds the least resistance at this point, making its way down to the county ditch. But there's no established drainage path there right now.
Okay.
I just have a question on Jim, you said that the culvert is a little bit higher than it, 2 feet higher, and so when the water gets there, it doesn't drain through it.
So the culvert is 2 feet. So the culvert is where it's supposed to be.
Okay.
We kind of dug out around the outlet side, which is on the east side of the road, just where that yellow line is. And the ditch line is 2 feet higher than the outlet elevation of the culvert. So the little basin that they dig and put riprap in there, that has to fill up. And then once that fills up, then it flows over the bank, as Kevin said, and then it flows out. But ultimately, you're holding, I'm saying 2 feet. It could be 1.6, it could be 2.1, but it's roughly 2 feet.
Was it supposed to be that way, or was it just miscalculated a little bit?
in terms of what is supposed to.
Well, if the water is not going through, like you say, it's,
Well, like Jim indicated, there probably was a drainage path at one point from that culvert to the county road ditch, but over time, that's probably filled in, with sediment. The wind blows dirt into the ditch, and so whatever drainage path was there before is now subsequently filled in. When we replaced the culvert, we didn't change any elevation of the culvert. We put it back at the same elevation it was, knowing that we still had an issue to the east because that property is now a couple of feet higher than the culvert. So there has to be a little bit of, the water has to build up in the culvert and in the ditch on the west side before it finally pushes it over the land and finds its way down to the ditch some way. So.
So this spring, when it was raining so hard, how big was the backup on either direction? April, May, June was flood city around here.
I would suppose that, I mean, I didn't necessarily walk the ditch, right, saying there's grass in there, but I would suspect that when the ditch line is full, it probably goes to the north side of Bear Homes. And then, you know what I mean, then there's enough volume in the ditch to hold the vast majority of that with, evaporation and, what's going to soak into the ground and stuff like that.
So it does dissipate by itself?
It will, absolutely.
Because whoever develops this property will have to do that. The city doesn't like condemnation. It's one thing we're known for is we don't like that. And we also don't like to spend a bundle of money. And whoever does develop this will have to get drainage eventually.
Or at that point, we would ultimately, I don't want to say require, but would probably try to get the easement at that point so we could do the work.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So we can get it accomplished without spending anything.
Which is kind of what we're talking about doing with the other property. Because there's another culvert by 150th and the development that we were talking about, I don't know, a few months back with the racetrack and that's where the other culvert is. So we would attempt to remedy that same situation with that development.
So to me, that sounds like a plan. Anyway.
Yeah, I just have one other question about in his letter, when it says that they drove the perimeter and ditches of our property, we talked about the current ditches and how the water does not flow through the ditches because they have not been maintained. Are they talking about other ditches?
They're talking about the county ditches. Ditch 15 and ditch 4 goes across their property. So they're referring to those ditches, the Rice Creek ditches.
Okay, because those should, I mean, the Rice Creek has a plan to clean their ditches. It's not a very good plan.
Correct, and they as private property owners could approach the Rice Creek to have those taken care of.
Is that what they have to do? Approach them themselves?
Yeah, they should approach them requesting ditch cleanup.
Okay.
Thank you, Kevin.
One more item, if no more further questions on that, just approval of the final payment to ASTECH for our microsurfacing project from this past summer. Took a little while to close out this contract. I was kind of in a disagreement with the contractor over final payment, but they've acquiesced to what my requested last payment was. So the total amount due on this project is $11,223.17.
So I'll make the motion to approve the final payment for the ASTECH microservicing project as recommended by the city engineer. Is there a second?
Rob, second.
And any questions or discussion, anyone?
Just more of a comment. It seems like that stuff seemed to hold up pretty good, at least on Howard Lake Drive. I drive that every day, and at this point, it took those whoopee sections out where it was kind of a
Yeah.
bumpy. So we'll see how it holds up over time.
Right. And the hope is that you'd get a minimum of 5 years, and if not longer, that would stay in place. We've had MnDOT does this process frequently. Anoka County also uses the process. It's pretty widely used. And it's very fitting for those areas where like you say, you got the little whoops,
Yeah.
the little cupping of the cracks that form in the pavement. So it fills those in. It fills in the little ruts of the wheel tracks very well. And it gives a nice surface, a nice black surface, again, which is good for snow melt and those kind of things.
Yeah.
So,
And even Running Aces Boulevard was in pretty rough shape there down by the pump house, and that all kind of filled in real nice too, so
Yeah.
kind of impressive stuff.
It looks good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
Anything else, Kevin?
No, just, again, this is my last council meeting, and so I just appreciate everything, working with the council. It's been a great run, and I feel really good that we've got a good person following up, and you'll be in good hands, so.
Happy retirement.
Yeah, happy retirement.
Very much.
Thank you. All right.
I don't think we voted on that last motion.
No.
We
I don't
didn't.
think we voted on the last motion.
I'll call for the vote.
Ron, aye.
Sue, aye.
Janet, aye.
Rob, aye.
And Jesse, aye. Mayor and City Council report. No, I'm sorry. Attorney report.
All right, I don't have anything
What?
other than my comments earlier.
All right. And are we ready for the new session down at the Capitol?
I just met with our team today, as a matter of fact, and we'll see, they're split government all over the place. So,
Doo-doo-doo. All right.
power sharing, that's the word,
Yep.
What is it? Power sharing?
Yeah.
at least in the House.
Yeah.
And a couple of lawsuits to resolve, and so there you go. Stay tuned.
Yeah, here we go again. Ron?
I don't have anything, other than we got the lights up in the park, out in the park, so.
Was there anything from the last park
they on
board
tonight?
meeting?
The last park?
Park board meeting, yeah.
Well, there are a few items, but I didn't bring my notes on them. But the ones where we're going to finish up, they want to put all the money towards removing those trees this year. Second of all, they want to get the master plan, if I'm right, Jack? At that
Correct.
master plan, I can't think of anything else other than we talked about the lights.
Dugouts.
And we talked to dugouts, yeah. And I think their meeting's, what, the 19th?
Of January, correct.
So we'll get that straightened out.
Thank you.
Other than that, nothing else.
Sue?
Just that I have my final Forest Lake Cable Commission meeting on Friday, which is a holiday party for the staff. So I will be going to that on Friday, late afternoon.
Nope.
All I have is just, Kevin, thank you for your service on the council. It's been very nice to work with you, and you've always been very helpful, so I look forward to working with Brian. And then just wanted to let most of the public know, Ron and I were talking about it for the meeting, but a longtime resident just lives up the road from us here, Bob Cockburn, passed away. I think he had a lot of years as a Forest Lake police officer. He was the school liaison when I went to high school, so always kept us safe. And yeah, it's a sad loss. So just wanted to share that with the community. That's all.
Personnel Committee report, Janet. And Sue.
So in the packet, you have a couple of items. One is the DDA proposal for the job classification and compensation services. We talked about this at our last workshop. And I did a summary. I'm not going to read it for you here, but I'm assuming that you guys read it before you came. So what I would be looking for is the Personnel Committee recommends that we engage in a contract with DDA's Human Resources with Mark Goldberg as our principal consultant, and then contract for option 5 as outlined in the proposal with a maximum cost of $11,000. So I'm making that motion.
This is Sue, I'll second.
So we have a motion and a second. Any other questions or discussions? I'll call for the vote.
Ron, aye.
Sue, I.
Janet, aye.
Rob, aye.
And Jesse, aye.
And then the second item from the Personnel Committee is a proposed promotion for our Planning and Zoning Technician, Eleanor Hahn. Again, there's a memo in here that outlines everything, but just for the purposes of the public, since we haven't talked about this one before, Ms. Hahn was hired as a planning technician on May 22nd, 2023. She started at the first step of the pay scale. After a satisfactory 6-month performance review, she moved on to step 2, and after a 1-year anniversary, she moved on to step 3. We had developed a promotional pathway in these positions when we hired Ben, the last planning person that we had. So it starts out when we hire someone straight out of college, they're hired as a planning technician, then they move to a assistant planner. There's an associate planner, then there's a planner or a senior planner. So there's a job description for each of those things, and Ms. Hahn has mastered all of the requirements of the planning technician and has taken on some of the duties in the new assistant planner position. Mostly the difference between the two is the amount of authority and independent work that she needs to do, and also the complexity of the work that is being done. So we feel really comfortable that she is capable and able and already doing some of that work, and so we're very happy to recommend that the council approve the promotion of Ms. Eleanor Hahn from planning technician to assistant planner. This would be effective on December 28th, 2024, and it would be putting her at step 3 in this new position from step 3 in her old position. That would be an hourly wage of $30.69. And that would include the 2025 cost of living increase. So that's my motion.
Well, this is Sue. I'm going to second and also say, Eleanor, you have done a wonderful job. When Janet and I and Elizabeth interviewed you, and you know, you were freshly out of college, and weren't you?
Yes.
That's always a risk. And you have really proved yourself, and you've done a wonderful job. You've done everything that we asked with a smile on your face, plus more. I know, and I've heard all good things from your manager. So I'm very happy that we're able to give you this promotion.
Thank you.
So we have a motion and a second. I'll call for the vote.
I'm gladly going to say yes. Aye.
Sue, aye.
Janet, aye.
Rob, aye.
And Jesse, aye. And I'll echo everyone's sentiments, but I knew it from the beginning, Eleanor. So anyway, aye from me. Thank you very much. And let's keep rolling.
Congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Planning Commission report, item number 5, commission appointments.
We have Planning Commissioner Robin Wood, whose term expires on December the 31st. Robin has applied for a reappointment to the commission, and one moment here, please.
There you go.
Thank you. Mr. Woods served on the commission for over a year, and he's been an active participant in his role as a member of the commission. Planning Commission terms are for 3 years, and Mr. Wood has requested reappointment, as I previously stated, and staff is requesting council to consider the reappointment of Robin Wood to the City of Columbus Planning Commission.
So I'll make the motion to approve the reappointment of Robin Wood for another term on the City of Columbus Planning Commission effective January 1st, 2025. Is there a
Good
second?
catch.
Yeah, no
I would have read it just as written. Good catch.
I'm starting to wake up. Is there a second?
This is Ron, I'll second that.
Any other questions? I'll call for the vote.
Ron, aye.
Sue, I.
Janet, I.
Rob, aye.
And Jesse, aye.
I might add that on the Planning Commission agenda for December the 18th will be the consideration of the passage of the cannabis ordinance. So that's been something that Eleanor and city staff and city council and the city attorney have worked on for the past 6 months. So we hope to see that come to fruition on next Wednesday night.
Do we need to do Susan's reappointment?
Excuse me?
Do we need to do Susan's reappointment?
Yes, we need to do Susan's also.
Okay.
Susan Botch was appointed to the Planning Commission in November 2024. She replaced Barb and filled Barb Bobbick's unexpired term, so she was only on here technically for 1 month. She has also requested reappointment, and she's been very good to work with. She interviewed well and I think she'll be a great addition for a continuation of a full term of the commission. So staff recommends her reappointment to the City of Columbus Planning Commission.
So I'll move to reappoint Susan Botch for another term of the City of Columbus Planning Commission effective January 1st, 2025. Is there a second?
This is Janet, I second.
I'll call for the vote.
Ron, aye.
Sue, I.
Janet, I.
Rob, aye.
And Jesse, aye. Number 6, Park Board report and board member appointment. You've sort of given us your report, Ron.
As far as the appointment, this involves Mr. Steve Ray. Mr. Ray was appointed to the City of Columbus Park Board in August of 2022. He served on the Park Board for 2 years and been an active participant in the activities and work on the board. Park Board terms are for 3 years, and Mr. Ray's term expires on December 31st, 2024. Mr. Ray has requested reappointment to the board, and city staff recommends that you consider his reappointment to this position.
So this is the guy who puts up lights so good, right?
No, it was Brad Norling.
Oh, right. So I make the motion to approve the reappointment of Steve Ray for another term on the City of Columbus Park Board effective January 1st, 2025. Is there a second?
This is Sue, I'll second.
We'll call for the vote.
Ron, aye.
Sue, I.
Janet, I.
Rob, aye.
And Jesse, aye. Public Works, Jim.
No report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Number 8, City Administrator Report, EDA Citizen Member Appointment.
Karen Fleming was appointed to the City of Columbus Economic Development Authority in December of 2022. Ms. Fleming has served on the EDA with distinction and represented the city in an exemplary manner in her role as a citizen member of the authority. EDA terms are for 6 years, and Ms. Fleming's term expires on December 31st, 2024. Ms. Fleming has requested reappointment to the authority, and staff recommends the City Council consider her request and reappoint her for another term.
So I'll move to approve the reappointment of Karen Fleming for another term on the City of Columbus Economic Development Authority, effective January 1st, 2025. Is there a second?
It's Rob, I'll second.
So we have a motion and a second. I'll call for the vote.
Ron, aye.
Sue, I.
Janet, I.
Rob, aye.
And Jesse, aye. Letter E, announcements and reminders. Planning Commission meeting December 18th, so next Wednesday at 6. And then the Wednesday City Council meeting gets moved to December 23rd, Monday night, since it's the week before Christmas.
I do have a question on the Planning Commission meeting next week. Is that a joint meeting, or is it just the Planning Commission?
I think it's just the planning
Just the
commission.
planning.
Just the
It's the
planning.
public
Just a-
hearing
Just the
for the
public-
A joint
cannabis,
meeting.
right?
That's correct.
It's about the pot stuff, or no, not a joint.
Yeah.
Not joint.
But it's about cannabis.
Public hearing.
Joint
yeah.
with the T meeting.
What? It's not, yeah, joint pot meeting.
So anyway, you
It
heard
took me a while.
today on the radio, they were screaming, what?
So they said that they're not going to do, they had the special
Lottery.
lottery, which got postponed a few weeks ago. Now they're just going to put them all in together with all the regular people, and it's going to be about 6 months. So it'll be a while. We still need to pass our ordinance, but it's probably going to be a while before anybody's license would receive a license and come to us and request.
There's a couple lawsuits pending over the process.
I will also just add that there was an article, again, in the Forest Lake Times last week about the Forest Lake Council approving their ordinances, and they are requiring all cannabis businesses to be under an IUP, not a CUP.
Just an FYI.
Yeah, just an FYI.
Is there anything else anyone would like to discuss? If not, we'll adjourn our meeting at,
Need a motion?
Second.
sorry, need a motion.
I just did it, and you just got a
I'll make a
second.
motion to move to,
Motion to adjourn.
and seconded. I'll call for the vote.
Second.
Ron, aye.
Sue, aye.
Janet, aye.
And Jesse, aye at 7:18.